Okay, so I'm going to go over how to grade this CAD quiz number 2. If you don't have a copy of the quiz sitting in front of you, you should go grab one. They are in the drawer where we stored the quizzes last time. I'm just going to go through the rubric line by line. So the first part of the rubric is to test whether the student produced a part that would make views that match those on the paper. So if you go ahead and hit Control 7 to get the isometric view, this is exactly how it should look. If the part is sideways, I can't even rotate it like that. If the part is sideways like this, that means they did not sketch on the proper plane and their top view would not be correct. So the first line they would get 0 points. Same way for if the part looks like this. So this is how the part should look. The second item, so if a student sketches a revolve and they make this geometry on both sides, they draw this same profile right here on both sides of the center line, and they go to the features and hit revolve and use 180 degrees instead of 360 is shown here, then that illustrates that they didn't completely understand the concept, so they would not get full credit for that. The mirror feature versus symmetrical relations, that's pretty easy to identify whether they did that correctly. If their sketch contains dimensions, for example, if this is 40 and this is 30, that would be considered incorrect because they didn't use a mirror feature or any symmetrical relations to define the part. They can fillet the part using either sketch fillets as shown here with this R5, or they can use the fillet feature right here. So the next item on the rubric is something that we haven't seen before. This is basically if their sketch is properly defined or not. So in order to grade that, we're counting degrees of freedom. So if a sketch is fully defined and everything is black, it's 0 degrees of freedom and it cannot move. But for example, if they're missing this horizontal relation, we can drag the sketch in one direction, so that is 1 degree of freedom right there. Another possibility that we might see is if they forget to make this coincident with the origin, the sketch is movable left and right, and that would be a point off for that. And if they're missing other dimensions, or if they're missing multiple dimensions, you'll probably be able to drag the sketch all over the place, in which case they have more than 1 degree of freedom if you can drag multiple lines and change the shape and size. The last item is pretty straightforward. If they don't have the exact dimensions that are shown here, if, for example, they add or subtract, like make up a dimension of 5 instead of by subtracting 15 from 20, that would be a point off. If you see a dimension of 40 here and a dimension of 30, that would be a point off. If in their sketch, instead of making a symmetrical dimension across the center line, for example, if they dimension this is 5, this radius is 5 instead of the diameter is 5, that would also be a deduction on this. Oops. But that pretty much sums it up.